So then you can look at it, and I used it for the presentation class that some people came to show them the actual work that goes into doing these types of garments. And after you get done stitching, there's a lot of hand stitching that has to go into it. All this called turn up, this actual fur has to be turned over, has a bias tape, which is very hard to get nowadays. Supplies are very hard to get to too, especially heat tape and stuff. You cannot find heat tape except from one furrier that sells it in the US. You can go get it from Greece and have it imported, but hard to find. So we're running out of supplies as well. So this actually is a bias tape that has to be hand stitched. You fold all this down. All the clasps or the hook and eyes have to be hand sewn in. And then afterward, it need to be stitched on top. And after the lining goes in, then you have to blind stitch the lining, fold it under, and blind stitch all the way down around the thing. There's over probably 50 hours of hand stitching that goes into a garment before it's even finished. So the fur is just one basic part of the actual item or the fur garment. The hardest part is actually stitching it all together to make it look right. Not very many people know that I actually had a piece on the purple carpet. It was the Emmys. Denali was nominated for 2 Emmy Awards. They didn't win, but I'm sure they will in the future because they are awesome. And Twitchell's wife, Mariah, contacted me and wanted to have something for her husband to wear. So I said, well, I got the perfect thing. Sealskin vest with deer leather cutout with a totemic raven on it, which is from his clan. So I said, you need to wear this on the carpet. And he goes, yes, I do. So they flew all the way to LA. We showed up at the carpet and everybody was wearing their indigenous clothing. It was awesome. And you could tell that they were in the audience just by all the Tlingit hats and the Haida hats that they were wearing. It was so awesome. NOAA controls the seals. U.S. and Fish and Wildlife Department of Interior controls the otters, polar bear, and walrus. They don't talk to each other. They don't share the same CFRs because seals are not. So when it comes to learning the laws, there's complete confusion because a lot of natives look at the law and it's extremely difficult to read, that you must have your handicraft considered significantly altered. There are no definitions of what they consider significantly altered. So for the longest time, a lot of natives would make and fashion things and they wouldn't know if they're altered enough, and therefore the feds would bust them for 40 years. Well, it took a long time, but eventually I got to where I was sending them my things, and I was sending them my stuff once a week. Twice a week I'd send them photos. Hey guys, is this altered? Is this altered? No? Why not? Okay, oh, is it altered now? Okay, sign off on it. So they had to sign off on everything I did, and after about 3 months of them getting pictures, they finally got tired of it and said, Christy, stop sending us pictures. And I said, fix a significantly altered issue. And I was, okay, well, what do you want to do? I tell you what I want to do. I want to get a group of native sewers and hunters going, and 3 law officers that enforce the laws on significantly altered and all the laws and rules for sea otters. And I want 1 attorney to read that MMPA law. Okay, done. So we got all together, picked a bunch of people, and we hashed it all out. And we came up with a 11-page handbook that is no longer posted on the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service page, but it will be on my page, so you can read up on it in order to know and learn the laws that they are enforcing on now. That might change, who knows, because you never know from who's in the hot seat, who's going to change everything. It's one depicts one way, the next person in the seat depicts it a different way, because there's nothing clearly written. It's like 50-50% shades of gray. It's an extremely difficult job to do. I have brick lines in my head from banging up against the wall so hard. I store them by a pattern book. I can't find a teacher to teach. I have comments from people that are haters of fur constantly bugging me. I can't go to the store and buy fur products as easily. I can't even get supplies used to do the fur quality that I want to do. So why? Why keep hurting myself? Why keep striving to do something that's completely off the wall and drives me nuts? Because of my customers. They love the work. They love the new stuff that I come up with. And I'm not a quitter. I just keep going. So you want to help me find a good tannery. Help teach. I'll teach you, you teach them. Save sealskin, sea otter sewing. Save hunting. Save everything. But don't let it go just because it gets hard. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Jack Fisher, to be presenting at today's Museum Midday on the topic of storytelling and connecting community.
Thank you for joining us for this. My name is Erica Jane Christian with Ketchikan Museums, and we are live streaming to you today from the Tongass Historical Museum. And of course, we're local lands of the Tontiquan and Saniaquan people of the Tlingit First Nations, and so we're very pleased to be able to share a little bit of history with you in this Museum Midday about community. So it's only fitting then that for this Museum Midday today that we're joined with Jack Finnegan, talking about storytelling, community, how that intersects. Storytelling is really important for community and connection. And it's fitting in that right behind us, you can kind of see here, we are actually opening a new exhibit tomorrow, Sustain Community, how we gather and why it matters. And really central to that exhibit is those stories that are woven throughout the story of our community through interviews and objects and photos. And so I'm glad that we get to learn a little bit more about storytelling today. Jack's experience in storytelling is multifaceted across many formats, venues, telling tales on the stage as an actor, director, and playwright, locally here in Ketchikan and abroad, to helping to give his fishing charter passengers a once-in so that they can build their own stories. Jack works directly with others to hone their storytelling craft and facilitate lively and raucous celebrations of local stories through his players and the Ketchikan Area Arts and Humanities Council. I'm sure that that's only scratching the surface, and we'll learn a little bit more about some of that work too here today. Jack's projects all really seem to center on connecting through storytelling. So you can argue with us later on that one if that's the case, but we're really glad to learn more about your work and the importance and impact of storytelling in our community. So everyone, Jack Finnegan. And if you have questions throughout or you just want to give a shout out, feel free to do so in the comments and we'll make certain to convey any questions. But thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Erica.
Yes.
Well, I'm very happy to see this exhibit, which I've heard quite a bit about over the course of its formation, and I'm really looking forward to kind of diving deep into what is on offer. Before we begin any conversation, which I'm looking forward to, I'm just going to read a little bit about my background in storytelling. I'll just get right to it. Hello again. As mentioned, my name is Jack Finnegan, and as I said, I'm looking very much forward to a conversation. And I hope to entertain several of your questions. But first I'd like to share a bit about my background in storytelling and to offer about stories themselves and storytelling, which I believe constitute one of the very roots of human understanding. Storytelling allows us to give shape and discern order to the barely contained chaos of the lived experience. Life is wonderful and terrifying. And the wonders and terrors of being alive give rise to myth and to legend, to theater and poetry and painting and song, to systems of philosophy, religion, and scholarship. These and every other form and self-investigation are built upon the architecture of storytelling. Stories are our best mechanism for exploring and sharing a deep that we've been given, the world and time in which we reside, and our neighbors, all other humans. Now, as a student of philosophy, I take a view of the personal lived experience and try to abide by the concept of memento mori. I, like all of you, shall reach some point of passing when little shall remain for stories I have left in my wake. And then, as time advances, I too shall be reduced to to faceless, nameless membership among the crowds who populate the pages of our history books. Histories themselves are narrative representations that we construct to remember, to examine, and to interpret the past. In fact, the English word story, which dates to the earliest 13th century, that's 800 plus years of just using the word, let alone drawing benefits from the activities the term portends. French histoire, meaning story, chronicle, or history, which was derived in its turn from the late Latin storia, which was shortened from the Latin historia, history, account, tale, or story. And we can no more discern the origins of storytelling than we can the earliest forms of language. But to the best of our knowledge, storytelling is a universal human trait, evident in every studied culture and observed to occur spontaneously in childhood. Stories, and the telling of them, are fundamental individual and collective self-knowledge. Every human life is made of stories, not just one, but many. These are Whitman's foods. There are the stories of ourselves, which we create or craft or discover and then reflect upon alone or choose to share with others. There are the roles that we play in the lives and stories of other people, sometimes central, but often peripheral. And we are also the characters who populate our neighborhoods, our regions, our state, province, or nation, are composed not by one author, but by many. In this wider view of humanity, we are the multitudes, known perhaps to our immediate neighbors, but vast majority of other humans, with whom we share this era and world, but whose lives will otherwise never intersect directly with our own. It be both humbling and reassuring. It secures for me a sense of place in this world. We all tell stories constantly, from the simple events of our day to the more elaborate presentations we might reserve for dear close friends, to the spin we may place on an incident or experience, or to the internal narratives we consider our own actions, our own histories, all built once again on the architecture of storytelling, some stories true, others fictions, none rendered perfectly, and all prone to wobble within the fragilities all humans suffer as mere animals abiding on a barely tamed and sometimes hostile planet. We are further confined by our knowledge of other people, which is why we ought to travel, to see and better understand the setting and circumstances of the lives of other human beings, and to see this world illuminated by other minds. It was this impulse to travel that was one major impetus for my 5-year project in storytelling, City Love Song. The plan had been to go to grad school. I had returned to college at 30, having fled Wisconsin at the tender age of 19 to adventure in New York City and ostensibly in pursuit of theater. There were failures and successes, and a few times I even made money as an actor or director, theater having long been my chosen medium for adding my face and voice to the stories that we tell to each other ourselves. As a capstone project in my senior year of high school, I wrote and performed a one-man show, purportedly fictional and in no way whatsoever a public airing of the griefs, aspirations, and confusions of an extremely sensitive young man raised in the hearty comforts and well-practiced etiquette of the American upper Midwest, and surely sharpened somewhat on the edge of an ego that had then emerged in the heyday of my teendom, when my passions roared and sang, when I was certain that I could set the world ablaze with all the light and flame and glory of the love that coursed and throbbed through my being. To be a teen. That theatrical exercise was instructive, but the demon it contained was itself exercised. Quasi-fictional theater was an approach to storytelling I thereafter abandoned, though my trajectory towards solo performance was now firmly established. I joined sketch and improv troupes, I auditioned, but I lacked the raw ambition to make much progress in the world of professional theater. A 6-month foray into stand-up comedy was an effort into yet another storytelling method, but not the form best suited to my skills or to my person. And then I found my people. In the 7th year of my city life, and about a year after those devastating attacks radically altered the American story, and from which, in my view, we still suffer today, and suddenly my days and nights were crowded with a community of dancers and directors, with writers and singers, with actors and thinkers, saints, sinners and clowns, storytellers, all. Lovers of stories, interested in the world, and striving to live. I reveled in the company of others impassioned by the unspeakable beauty of the living world and the profound cruelties humankind inflicts upon itself, and I was enlivened. I drew then from a shared well, and those waters ran plenty and sweet. I shifted focus and began dabbling in spoken word, not the rhythmic verse-like slam poetry style, but carefully composed descriptions of elements of life. The piece I wrote, Ward Lake Theater Walk, a meditation on the color green, is a good representation of my current style and approach. This effort, I might add, is well served by the experiences gained through participation in the drama, debate, and forensics programs offered in my middle and high school. Kudos to the Kayhi DDF team who just claimed the title of state champion. Proud of you. I was soon performing in poetry houses and at festivals. But my 20s wouldn't last forever, and neither could the passion play that had enveloped my life in the East Village. So, back to college. I studied as a thinker. I enjoyed school, a wealth of knowledge ladled up to me. I only had to toe the line and try to keep up with the reading. It still had room for narrative. Identify a problem, try to work it out. Examine something fascinating. Express an idea with words. Lecture of storytelling, if often reduced to its most utilitarian. I performed well in my major and assumed I would teach. Teachers are among the stewards of story and knowledge, and many great teachers make good use of stories to engage and to educate those young and still forming humans whose own personal stories are in varying stages of development. But when the time came for me to consider schools and tackle that mountain of paperwork, I balked. That old creative flame, not extinguished but repurposed in my time as a renewed student, was licking again at the base of my heart and exciting old dreams and unforgotten ambitions. I still yearned to contribute, to speak. I still wanted to lend my voice to the broader human story, to be public-facing and deliberate, to share tales that somehow capture the elements of how it feels to be alive, and to spur not only some echo of that feeling in anyone who might hear me, but to stir in others a desire to venture out into the world and to discover the richness of this brief life that unfurls before our eyes. I know that I am lucky to love being alive. Since it comes to an end one way or the other, why not enjoy it, or at least try the best we can? My plans for further schooling were abandoned. Instead, in the typically dramatic style of my pre-Middle Ages, I applied to the most competitive MFA programs in creative nonfiction writing in the country. I was sure I'd gain entry. I had good grades and was inspired. At least one of the 5 would accept me. They all said no. The last word from the final school, arriving moments before I flew to the south of France, aroused by overtures toward a possible transatlantic romance, which turned out, like my prospects for grad school, to be doomed. A week later, I left a flat in Toulouse for a midnight train to Paris, heart now unencumbered of the concept, aflame with a passion to seize life and to talk about it, to tell stories, to try to say something important. I had planned a one-off storytelling performance in which I would collate, parse, and poetize 13 years of observation of life in New York City, a swan song before jetting off to a new life in grad school. But grad school was out, and somewhere over the Atlantic, my plans for a swan song shifted and grew, and would evolve over the next 5 years into a triptych of performance works that would allow me to tell stories in 50 cities across 6 continents, including travel across nearly 20,000 miles of American rail, performing in coffee shops, public squares, bookstores, theaters, whomever would have me, in a grand attempt to connect communities on both a national and global scale. I called the project City Love Song. In its first phase, I traveled America, performing stories about New York City. Those travels, mostly by rail, became the basis of a spoken portrait of America, which I presented in the public squares of cities. That journey provided material for a suite of stories about our global neighborhood, which I then presented across the United States, all with an aim to encourage in others a deeper curiosity. This project was animated by an exhortation made by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who insisted that we build a beloved community through the practice of a Greek word that King translated as an understanding, redemptive goodwill toward all people. That was my ambition, however middling my effort, to connect the communities I visited by bringing to light through stories the wonders and the terrors of the places I had seen, of the other lives I had encountered, fragments of humanity from near and far. That project produced many failures and successes, and there isn't time today to delve into those details. More pertinent to today's museum midday is that in a roundabout fashion, that project brought me here, to Ketchikan, where it has since been my privilege to remain actively engaged with storytelling, both through theater with a role as the host of Stories at Latitude 56, through the Ketchikan Area Arts and Humanities Council. Whereas City Love Song had allowed me to in community on a grand and sweeping scale, the intimacy of Ketchikan and the spiritual generosity of the people here have proven to me the exceptional personal power of oral storytelling and its importance in strengthening and lending color to our shared social fabric. I love living in Ketchikan and lucky to be here. If you ever attend one of our story slams or chat me up at a beach fire, you are bound to hear me express some of the many reasons why. But my knowledge of this place, while growing, is limited. Its stories far predate my own. The culture of storytelling among Alaska Native communities is something that I am only just beginning to grasp, let alone to understand. I am grateful to the work of my friend and colleague Tora Zamora, whose recent efforts to explore Tsimshian stories and traditions of storytelling hold tremendous promise, standing to a nomadic settler like me, another bridge of understanding built upon the architecture of storytelling. The intimate impact on our views of one another. Our fishbowl proximity demands a certain advanced degree of tolerance in the service of our collective well-being, and though this sometimes presents challenges, I think it also deepens our connection to this place and to each other. No one seems to be ambivalent about Ketchikan, and most people I encounter share how they became connected to this community. Most Ketchikan origin stories I hear are told with a mixture of wonder and pride, and sometimes small bits of loathing of one inconvenience or another. We are Ketchikan's people, the characters who give this town its character. And when we gather to hear each other's stories, I am reminded again and again of the power of vulnerability and the gift of empathy. Personal stories, they offer something of themselves. And when they do so in person, bodily, in a room together, sharing in each other's presence, the sensation of being alive, to me, is palpable. Sad or funny, gambling or crass, a wide spectrum of human emotions plays out upon that stage, and the listening audience, friends and neighbors, perhaps a few strangers, impress me again and again with their generosity of spirit. This is the power, the connective power of oral storytelling, presented in a dates into time immemorial. In every month I've hosted for nearly 5 years of the Story Slam, I can recall only one occasion when we had no first participants. This to me is a testament to the value and even necessity of giving people an opportunity to share their stories and to hear the stories of others. We strengthen both our individual and our collective selves when we better understand each other, and we can gain that understanding through the telling and hearing of stories. The stories of yours and mine, of ours together, these are the stories of our time. I draw, once again, well, and the water is plentiful and sweet. Thank you for listening. I am happy to take any questions.
I have a couple of questions for you.
Please.
You mentioned stories at Latitude 56. What's been the most surprising thing to come out of stories at Latitude 56 for you?
Most surprising thing, I think it is the degree to which people who express an early hesitation to participate suddenly find they have the courage to join the stage. And I think that comes about for two reasons. One, because the people who take to that stage are generally very honest and very vulnerable. And I think once a person who is maybe otherwise hesitant to participate sees that vulnerability offered, they gain a sense of confidence that they too can be vulnerable in that way. I think the second component of it, which is so crucial, is the nature of the audience. As I mentioned in these pages, impressed at how receptive the audience is. And that extends beyond just the Story Slam. When I miss the monthly grind very, very much. And I hope to see it in play again soon. But one of the things that I've always enjoyed about the monthly grind is how positive and affirming that audience tends to be. Not even seems to be. I mean, they are that affirming. And so even if someone is trying something for the first time, whether it's a song they're playing on the guitar at the monthly grind or sharing a personal story in front of a group of strangers and maybe some friends on stage, I'm always pleasantly surprised when someone finds that courage again. It happens quite frequently. And when people express interest in the program and ask about it, I tell them to just come join us. I'm not going to pressure you to get on stage, just come see how it all plays out. And I would say 9 times out of 8 or 9, people who had expressed some interest end up taking to the stage eventually.
We've got another question from here. What untold story would you love to be able to tell?
Oh my gosh. I might have to meditate on that question for, I'd love to marinate on that if I may.
Yeah.
Untold stories, sometimes, I mean, the immediate thought is like, do I have a secret? You know? Or is there some, actually, You know what? I had a paragraph in here that I ultimately excised because I didn't think it fit with this per se. But now, due to this question, I will say I kind of fell down a little rabbit hole once I started talking about philosophy and my views on memento mori and how I have this kind of finite view of what the personal life is like and the duration of lifetime that we have and what that means and the impact of time. And there is, I've probably 10 to 15 years of thinking and reading on the subject of time, on the concept of time, on the puzzles of time, which at some point in the future, should I be lucky enough to have one, I would like to address probably in a performance of some kind.